as a coach, in kind of along your journey, how has your philosophy changed at all, if at all, in experiencing these very elite athletes and leaders within their fields? And what methods do you use to help cultivate those kind of behaviors of excellence?
Let me jump in real quick. Just on a stitching point is that in elite sport, we think that after a mistake is made on the field of play, that as coaches, we have less than 2 seconds to determine, right? Would you agree with this? Less than 2 seconds to dramatically impact the performer. And so it's as simple as, and if that happens within 2 seconds after the mistake, and they're looking over to see, there's so much that's lost. Like really, the dignity of the person is at stake. And so we think we have less than 2 seconds to make or break that relationship. And I'll just add one more point, is that what's unique about sport is that it's public. And so to be a public performer, that vulnerability and courage go hand in hand. And when we publicly humiliate somebody, somehow we think that that's okay.
It's our ego.
Right? Somehow, like, we're frustrated and at their expense because it makes us look bad. And somehow in sport, that seems to be like, it's okay for the coach to be frustrated. Like, that gets the most out of them. It's never worked for me. It doesn't work for most athletes I know. It just publicly embarrasses them. And what ends up happening is that my experience is that you never get that relationship back. Less deep work. And so I don't know if you guys have, like thoughts on that, but I'll tell you, like, that it's just a fine little piece. But I don't want to railroad your question, which is about philosophies and practices to help people be successful.
Yeah, ready to answer that question.
So sorry, Adam. Yeah.
I got all these thoughts in my mind.
Do you want me to call you Dr. Adam? Would that help?
Yeah, it might, actually. I'm going to bypass your comment. Although I do agree, and you mentioned it, that the ego gets involved with coaches way too much. We all need to kind of get over ourselves more than anything. I think in terms of like coaching philosophy and how personally, like, I've changed. I remember when I first started, I've just become way more process oriented. And less results oriented, and the process, being more process oriented, has allowed me to be, more detailed. It's allowed me to be more consistent, which I think is an undervalued trait nowadays. And I say this all the time. I kind of wish I wish success upon people. More so, not so they just feel this great joy and happiness that comes with winning a gold medal or winning a national championship, but more so people can feel and understand that nothing effing changes. Nothing changes. When you have success, you still have your same struggles. Yeah, it feels good for that short period of time, but then it's on to the next thing, and honestly, your life does not change. And for that, that's one, I've been blessed to be a part of a lot of great teams and have a lot of success with those teams. And one of the greatest benefits is that it's given me perspective on life, that nothing really changes. And then I think the other thing is just it allows, the only really cool thing, at least for me, is that you have a little bit of a bigger platform to get that message across to people. So that's changed. I used to be a coach who, if you watched me now, and there may be some people in the room that watch me, I am calm. I hardly say a word to the referees. I don't even say much to my team. If you watched me 15 years ago, you would have seen a guy who was berating the referees, who was yelling at his players constantly, who was telling them every step on what to do on every single play. But the reality is that was not helping me. It was not helping my athletes be. All I was concerned about was, how are we going to get the W here? How are we going to win the national championship? And in turn, it made me worse. It made me, I wasn't clear enough with my thoughts. I wasn't, again, detailed. I didn't have, one of the things I always love and always keeps me kind of focused is you always begin with the end in mind. I never had the end in mind. I was always thinking about, that moment right then. And there's a part of that that's good, but it was just about trying to get the next W instead of trying to really live through the process as much as possible. So I think I've done a better job of that.
You have.
But you lose it. But it's good. But at times, that anger and the frustration can build, and you can. No,
I think that's bad as long as it's not personal.
I agree.
When you're talking about the process, that's exactly what I've learned in my career is that if I truly believe in a growth mindset, then that means that every day we're going to get 1% better. And that includes myself. And so I have learned to not praise the athletes that say you're on balance beam when you're doing a flip and your legs are supposed to be straight. The athletes that stay on the beam but their legs are bent, if she goes up and I say, come on, you got to push your legs harder and split later so that your legs will stay straight. If she will do that and fall, I will praise that. And so my coaching technique now is I give more praise when they make a change, even if they haven't been successful with the skill, so that they're not afraid to attempt the change, to make the change, to try to have the courage to do something different, because we all know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
I love what you're saying. It's all about fostering that growth mindset. At PCA, we talk about, praising desired effort even when the results aren't there. So that's so important. In those moments when nothing's going right, when things are just maybe spiraling out of control, where you're just like, wow, nothing's working, how are you able to maintain that composure that you talk about, and how are you able to, or what do you turn to in those moments of difficulty?
I maintain my composure in that I am choosing my tone, my words. I don't let anger just like run amok. But in those moments, I feel like I have to throw the proverbial cold water in their face. And so when we're in a meet or we're in training or having an intra-squad and things are just spiraling downward and they're getting more tense and more tense and more tense, I've got to figure out how to get them to flip it right then. And it's usually bringing them together, my voice going up, getting them misvalize in their face, and telling them, you have worked too hard to allow yourself to do that. It works. This part works. And I said, so go outside. All you go outside, go get a break, go to the bathroom, go get some water, and come back, and do not step back in that gym until you have flipped it to that positive mental game, that that grit. Got it? Go out there, talk about it as a team, and come back once you have decided to be great. Bye-bye. Then I go get a cup of coffee, and it usually works.
The idea and the concept of growth mindset is wonderful. And it's easy over a glass of wine or a cup of tea or a great dinner with friends. Like this idea that we're going to explore and be in a learning frame. To have a growth mindset when you want it most, unless you train your mental skills, right? So the strategy that you're using is like, hey, go figure it out. We've talked a lot about the mental part of the game. You're great. Go figure it out. Come back. What is that? That's an exercise for them to go, oh, God, okay, hold on. What do? Probably need to take a couple breaths. Probably need to say a few things to themselves that work, like a credible dialogue of why I have the right to go for it, right? Yeah, and so that's self-talk and arousal regulation, breathing skills. Like, those are two foundational skills. There's only 5 mental skills. That's it. And at the elite stage, what percentage of would you guys say on the best of the best, the tip of the arrow performers, what percentage, and this is not a layup, I don't mean it to be, or like, is physical, technical, or mental? Like, how do you break that out?
To me, you always hear it. You heard my coaches growing up, it was 90% mental, 10% physical. I don't know if I believe that entirely.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
But it's a part of the game.
But you can't have the physical and the other without the mental. It doesn't work unless you've got the mental. It doesn't matter how talented you are, it won't work unless you have control of your mind.
And the amazing thing to me is that we always hear this stuff, okay, if it's 80, 20, 70, 30, 90, 10, whatever it is, how much time do we actually spend working on the mind?
That's what I didn't want this to be a layup.
It should be. Is this where you're going at? This is good for business here.
Yeah, this is good.
90 10.
No. But I think
it's true.
So what if it is? Let's say it is 15% of the game, right? And what happens in young athletics is that you've got some kids that are exceptionally fast and strong and talented, and they just shine because of their physical attributes. And then as you go into the college ranks, they start to get really good. Like, everyone's pretty good. Like, in your sport, like, that is the elite, And in some sports, it's not. Like, on a football field, some people are extraordinary and some people are just getting their degree. And they happen to be kind of athletic, but they'll never play football again. And then you get into elite sport, professional sport, and like, everybody is really talented. And the margins of error are really small. So what separates them is the way that they think. So to your point earlier, how much time should we allocate in our training session for mental skills training?
You do not go into a repetition of anything without hitting the refresh button on your mind. It's pointless.
Which is deep focus, right? Like, that's deep focus. So there's a reason they're elite coaches, is because what's happening in the next generation of athletics is that 60 years ago, it went from, okay, like, the coach is doing it all, then it broke out into specialties, and now what we're finding is it's going back to integrated science. And so the greatest performers know how to do that. They have figured it out. They figured out how to integrate the physical, technical, and mental all within their training sessions. The rest of us, we need to separate it out to learn. Like, okay, I need to do breathing training. I need to do self-talk training. That sounds weird, but it's not. I need to do some mindfulness work. And what's happening now in elite sport is that they're integrating all three inside of the practice arenas. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're seeing as a trend that's taking place.
I'm just going to finish up because I need to leave in a bit. But per what you were saying about as soon as an athlete takes a shot or something, the first person they look to is their parents. I remember years and years and years ago at UCLA doing research papers and all that on coaching. And I was shocked because in gymnastics, the coaches are right there, and every single turn you take, they're giving you a correction. So as soon as you finish your skill, the first thing you do is you look to the coach for the validation. Was that good or not? There's no self-evaluation. And I remember reading, I don't know if things have changed since then, but that coaches should actually give a correction about every 5, 6, 7 times. And what that allows the athlete to do is to figure it out. Figure it out what worked well. Figure it out what made you get into a good place mentally, emotionally. And it's interesting because in our gym, I coach balance beam. And our beam team, they are rock stars. And they have this swagger about them that is undeniable. And I don't understand, we've been trying to figure out the last few years, why they don't have that same swagger as much on the other events. We do on floor because everybody loves to dance. But one of my freshmen noticed that because I'm the head coach, I'm not always over on beam. I'm out on the phone, I'm doing other things, I'm helping an athlete, I'm talking to the trainer, I've got to run the athletic department, whatever. So our athletes, because they're divided up in groups, so there's like 5 athletes on beam at a time, they're left to coach each other. So first of all, we all know when you have to teach someone something or coach them, you learn in the process because you're having to figure it out. And secondly, they're accountable to each other, that whole team thing that Adam was talking about. And the girls said, Miss Val, we've got the swagger on beam. Don't take it personally, but we don't need you. Which actually, to a coach, that's a dream team right there, when they don't need you. And that was, anyway, I want to say I do have to leave. I'm sure most of you have seen the viral sensation that is Caitlin Ohashi. And we're going to be on Good Morning America tomorrow. We're going to New York right now.
Amazing.
Thank you. But when you watch it, when you go home and you watch it for the 800th time, the one thing that every thread says on every social media platform is, it's so great to see an athlete of her stature compete and exude so much joy. Everyone is using that same word. We are all starved for joy. And so I implore you, please, don't ever think you've got to take the joy out of learning for your children, for their athletes. And when we do take the joy out, it's always because our egos are too darn big. So give yourself the talk. Make yourself take a break and a timeout. Switch your attitude and come back and get your ego out of it. Did you want to say something?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to say there's a reason why she's a world-class coach. And I think you can feel it. You can hear the words, how they match. Her thoughts, her words, and her actions are lined up. And I know she's running to New York right now. And I just want to encourage you to go get her book. It's new. It just came out, right? It just came out recently?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out in October, and within 2 weeks it sold out. Yay!
Yeah. So
It's
go
a
grab some of that
bestseller.
good
Thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. This has been amazing. When I found out that I was going to be on the panel with these two gentlemen, they're really the best in the world in their fields. And so this has been a tremendous honor. Thank you.